Welcome to Reason class with Reason Basics. We're going to start out with registration, demo mode, internet verification, and then we're going to go over the preferences. Then we're going to go through the overview of Reason, the consolidated windows, the dividing bars, the key and tool window. Then we'll go through keyboard shortcuts. After that, we'll go through the menus at the top of Reason. Then we'll go over the Reason cache where your audio is stored. After that, the Reason factory sound bank and refills. Then we'll go through the file types. Finally, rewiring to another program, and then at last you have the test. In startup, you launch Reason, and it will give you three different options: demo mode, run with internet verification, or register and authorize. That is if you have not registered yet. So there is an authorization key that came with Reason, and that does make all of this much easier. If you run in demo mode here, that will allow you to open Reason and save your song, but it can't open a saved song. Over here you have run with internet verification, and you just click on it. You can type in your username and your password that you've already registered. If you don't have your authorization key on your USB, if you do have your authorization key and you haven't registered yet, you can register here. For right now, I'll just put in my authorization key and voila, we're opened up. So for preferences, maximizing your settings, I would recommend you go into the Reason menu. The second thing you pull down is preferences. And here it allows you to change a bunch of settings within Reason to get your audio routed. So let's start out with just the general preferences. So first thing, set your knob mouse range to very precise. That allows more minute changes over all the parameters. Automation cleanup you can keep normal. Reduce cable clutter. Sometimes the back of the rack gets a little cluttered, and I will tell you guys one hotkey real quick. If you press the computer key K, that will toggle between reducing cable clutter and unreducing it. But for now, just keep that normal. Appearance, both things should be selected. And next, let's go into default song. So when you launch Reason, it sets what kind of song is opened up, what your settings are. Over here in the file menu, you can certainly go through a template, and there are a bunch of templates that are given to you. As well, you can save a song as a template, and then it will show in that drop-down menu. But for here in the preferences, you can either set it as empty rack, or you can find a file of a template that you set up, and that will open it up. So CPU usage, all the rest of that stuff, you can just keep those as default. Now let's go through your preferences in your audio. Click there, and let's start out with audio device. This is where you will allow your hardware interface to route your audio. If you don't have an audio interface, you can just select built-in output, so it'll come out of the speakers of your laptop. But here I have the Project Mix multi-channel, but you will select your audio device. Now over here, Master Tune, that's if you wanted to select a different tuning other than 440. Over here on sample rate, there's a bunch of different sample rates. 96K is the highest, and that basically means 96,000 samples per second. The higher the sample rate you use, the more it'll tax your CPU, so there's a bit of a balance between how high your sample rate is and how many tracks you have and how well your computer's running. For right now, let's use 48,000. Buffer size, that's the thing with latency. So latency refers to the short period of delay, usually measured in milliseconds, between the time when a sound comes into your computer and when it comes out. So if you're recording, a lot of times to hear yourself back in time, you want to keep the buffer size low, but if you're mixing or something, you want to move it a little bit higher. Okay, low would be like 128, and then higher would be like 512 samples or 1024 or something like that. Let's see, the next thing, let's go into active input channels. Depending on how many channels you have in your audio interface, again, the more that you have, the more it taxes your CPU. Over here, preferences of control surfaces. This is how you allow your keyboard to connect to Reason, your MIDI devices. So here you can see I have an Axiom 61. You can always hit auto detect surfaces if you haven't done this yet, and it will usually do everything for you. You can also double click on it and you can hit find and then hit your keyboard and it will immediately recognize it, and you can hit OK. So make sure use with Reason is also checked. Let's go over the overview of Reason now. Let's open up a default song. Go to the File menu, Open, and then just go into the Reason folder under Locations, and then open up the top song there. There you go. So that's Evolution of several different windows here. There's a dividing bar that moves between those windows. And that helps you drag things up and down. So as you can see here, we have the mixer, and you can look at more or less of it by dragging down that vertical or that horizontal scroller. Okay, then you have the rack section. If you move the dividing bar up, that each track and device sends audio to a corresponding channel on the mixing board. So as you can see, as I click on each one of these, the mixing channel that accompanies that will flash. That helps me navigate through the rack here. Also on the mixing board, I can hit rack, that little button, and it will flash on the device in the rack. These rack devices can unfold and fold to see more parameters that can be adjusted to tweak your sound. And also, if you want to flip the rack around, you hit tab on your computer and you can look at the back of the rack for routing. The next thing is the sequencer. Draw that dividing bar up, and here is the place where all your audio and MIDI is arranged in a linear fashion for your whole song. This is where you record stuff. And if on your mixing board, if you hit sequence or a rack, you can immediately go between those three windows. Now the fourth window, which is kind of hidden a little bit, is called the Regroove Mixer. Down here, you hit that little button and bam, the Regroove Mixer will pop up down here. This allows you to alter your MIDI data by sliding it forward or backwards or shuffling it more or less, and you can go to these predefined groove templates. There's also a global shuffle. Let's go through the tool window, which is a separate window that goes on the side of Reason, but it has 4 different sets of it as well. So the first little thing you can hit on is the devices. Now, all these devices are within Reason. They're all instruments and effects. And you can hit create audio track or create instrument right there, or you can go down and just drag and drop into the rack. Next is the sequencer tools. Quantize notes, pitch, alter notes, automation cleanup, a whole bunch of different options for your MIDI data and audio data. Next, let's go through the groove settings. This corresponds to the Regroove Mixer. It allows you to add in extra patches. And then the next window within tool window is song samples. And this allows you to sample audio that's connected to your sampling input, which you can just immediately record little samples. Or if a sample is recorded from a rack unit, such as Redrum or a sampler, then you can tweak that audio. So you can double click on the sample and you can alter it in different ways, fading out or in or whatnot. On-screen piano keys, which is another window. Here you can use your computer keys. If you have a laptop and you don't have an additional controller, you can use your computer keys, or you can just use your mouse that way to enter in information. Next, and the last window we're going to go over is the recording meter window, which is your audio that allows you to tune that you can see from across the room. Next, let's go over the keyboard shortcuts. Now, without going into too much detail on all the keyboard shortcuts, I would recommend you guys do this. You go into your applications on your main hard drive, into your Reason folder, and then into all the documentation into English. And then here's where you have not only the operation manual, which is very important, but you have the key commands PDF. Key commands PDF. By learning all these key commands, you will get much faster with Reason. So I would recommend you just learn all those. Next is the menus, okay? All the menus at the top of Reason. So you have the Reason menu, the File menu, which allows you to import audio, to open save songs, to optimize bounce mixer channels. All your songs are shown at the very bottom of that menu, your previous songs. The edit menu changes per device that you're on. Okay, so if you're in the sequencer, the edit menu is going to look one way. If you are on a redrum, it's going to look a different way. In the create menu, this is like the heart of Reason. This is where all your devices are and your effects are, similar to devices in the tool window. But this gives you all these different kinds of instruments, samplers, drum machines, synthesizers, and then you have effects, and then finally you have a bunch of things in the other menu, which are like routing and sequencing things. Option menu gives you more keyboard control and remote override edit mode to assign your hardware to interact with Reason in different ways. Windows just allows you to open up your tool window or open up your on-screen piano keys. Let's go over the Reason cache now. All your audio, before you've saved a song, is stored here in your Reason cache, just in case that your song crashes, that you can back it up. But all of that, because it's stored there, will start to really gain in size. So you go into your user folder, and then into your library, and go into caches. At the very bottom of caches, of course, you will see Reason, and then your name. You can click on there, and there's a whole bunch of different files, which at this point, that looks like maybe a few gigs of information. And you just go move to trash, select all those things, and empty trash. And don't be worried, that won't affect your songs that you have stored or saved. So next, for the Reason Factory Sound Bank. In the Reason Factory Sound Bank, when you browse a patch, these come default with Reason, and they have all different kinds of sounds and samples, and they're arranged mostly per device. But if you go up here to all instrument patches, that will hold all your instruments, and it has them all arranged. And notice, if you click on a combinator, and it opened up a combinator, over here we click on an NNXT, it's going to open up an NXT patch, depending on what device you're on. But there's all different kinds of sounds there: organs, pads, rhythmic sounds, strings, bass, many different sounds for your songs. Next, we're going to go over some file types. The trick is, if you are browsing for an NNXT but you go into a pulverizer folder, you will not see anything. It will look blank. But there are things in there, of course, but they're only for pulverizers. So here are a few different file types that are specific for those different devices. And here are a few basic audio types. Now let's go through Rewire. We're going to use Digital Performer now and open up an auxiliary track. And that auxiliary track will just connect the main outputs and select the input to be Reason mix left and right. And this will allow us to just open up Reason, and it will run simultaneously alongside of Digital Performer. So I could record my entire song in Digital Performer, and then if I want to add a loop from Reason, I can just do so, and it will play right along with it. I can also select an audio track and record the audio directly out of Reason into this other program, and then I can quit Reason and just use little bits and chunks of Reason within another program, and that works with any program. Okay, now let's just go over the basic test.